Thank you ever so much for joining me today for Social Collaboration, how user-added content enhances your documentation. Just so you know, this webinar is going to be recorded, and so you'll have access to that when it's over. And if you have any questions, just go ahead and type them in. I'll get to as many as I can at the end of the webinar. If I don't get to yours, don't sweat it. I'll be sending out an email with answers to everyone as soon as this webinar is over as well. So a little bit about myself. Like I said, product evangelist, MadCap Software. I have lots of experience in writing, in broadcasting, and also in social media management, which is why that is what I'm talking about today. So let's go ahead and check out what we're going to learn. And that is going to happen when I get my computer to respond to my mouse. Here we go, slideshow from beginning, and bam. What we'll learn today: how social collaboration enhances customer satisfaction, how user-added content supplements your documentation, how user-added content saves you time and money, and also how to incorporate user-added content into your workflow. Plus, we'll find out how tracking user activity will help you create more useful documentation. I'm going to start out with this quote: engagement, not data. Our customers ask a question and we throw a canned web page at them, or a data sheet, or a banner ad. And what they want is a meaningful conversation. And I want you to kind of hone in on that word conversation, because that is a really, really big part of what I'm talking about today. Conversation. That is what social is all about, and that is where your documentation should be going. Let's look at the evolution of documentation, shall we? From petroglyphs where Captain Caveman and Fred Flintstone were giving each other instructions on how to cut mammoth steaks, to some stone tablets and scrolls and feather pens and the printing press. Yay, that made documentation a whole lot more accessible. But that had nothing on the typewriter. And then the computer age, where the internet made everything everywhere all at once. Oh, then along comes technical documentation tools, such as, oh, let me pick one at random. How about MadCap Flare? And social media as well, which is in and of itself documentation, and I'll explain a little more about that as we go on. And then finally, I'd be a very, very bad girl if I didn't mention MadCap Pulse, MadCap Software's social documentation tool, that I'll take you through a little bit at the end of this webinar, just so you can see some of these concepts in action. So, TechCom versus social. They kind of seem to come from two different worlds. Let's look at some of the characteristics of both. TechCom, one way. You are one person saying a lot of things to one big group of people, and they tend to not have too many channels to talk back to you. Social is by nature interactive. People are sharing, people are tweeting, people are retweeting, people are resharing, people are talking to each other, responding, liking, all kinds of goodies. Interactive. TechCom is planned. You know exactly what you're going to be writing about. You have a plan. You write it, and when you're done, you're done. Social is responsive. When someone has a question or a comment, other people are there to jump in on that conversation. TechCom, you are probably documenting the most likely use cases. And in social, anyone who has any experience with whatever you're writing about, in any capacity, under any circumstances, will be writing about that and sharing their experiences via social. All use cases can be covered. TechCom, for the masses. Yeah, again, you're writing a set of documentation that is for the good of most of the people that are going to be using the product or service. And social is personal. It's one-on-one conversation that happens to be in front of a lot of people, but any of those people who are observing the conversation can participate, and it becomes, again, conversation. That is the key word. Now, when we go into why should I care? Why should I care about my social my documentation when it comes to you know, getting in on the social game? It's very important for many, many reasons. For instance, pardon me, as this Bam, there we go. Your department is shrinking. Chances are that you are working with less people than they used to. Unless you're a lone wolf doing your documentation, you might have to wear more hats and do the work of more people as they're downsizing and budget cuts and things of that nature. This poor guy's covering at least 3 or 4 people's jobs. And sadly, that's pretty realistic for a lot of technical communicators. You should also care about social because chances are you have to do more with less. It is a cliche. It is a big cliche. But cliches are cliches for a reason because they tend to be true. You've probably been told, guess what, we're cutting back. You're going to have fewer resources, but we want you to do the same amount of work at the same quality. How lucky for you. Social can help you with that, and we'll get into that in a moment. You also need to stay relevant. There's what you want to say. There's what your audience is interested in. And relevance is that sweet spot right in the middle of the two. And I'll talk to you about how social can help you hit that sweet spot and stay relevant to your readers. And also, social media, not a fad. It's not going anywhere. Yeah, sometimes we get sick of Facebook and take a break for a minute, but we always go back. We always have to see those cute puppy pictures and, find out what your friend down the street thinks of the new restaurant, This guy's out on his yard doing his Facebook situation, but that's not happening. Social media is not going anywhere, and I have the statistics to prove it. According to a report from Edison Research, 56% of Americans have a profile on a social networking site. Now, this is up from 52% the previous year and 48% the year before that. Social's growing. Social, again, is not going anywhere. It's just getting bigger. More and more people are getting involved. So why should your documentation jump into the social game? Because in order to stay relevant, you need to participate in the conversation. Now, think about what you're doing now. Are you having a conversation or are you broadcasting? If there's a single voice coming out of your documentation, if it is one voice instructing people how to do something, that is like broadcasting. When a writer wants readers to understand complex technical information, the writer will take on a role of a lecturer rather than a teacher. Now, this approach is good for some people. I know in college some of my friends really loved a lecture, but to me they were the bane of my existence. I worked better in a lab, or I worked better seeing demonstrations. Having somebody talk to me and give me instructions on how to do something is not as good as seeing it or hearing someone else's experience or doing it myself. And the broadcasting approach doesn't take into consideration the valuable experience of your readers. It all boils down to this. Traditional technical communication tends to not be a conversation. It tends to be broadcasting. What you need to do is think about other perspectives. Why are people talking when you've already given them tons of information in your documentation? Well, it's because you typically write one set of documentation for all users. You probably don't get to include every single situation-specific example. And this leaves your users to fill in the blanks in order to apply the information to their own needs. But if a user has experience with what will work best in a specific situation, they're going to be able to write about it so that other users in that similar situation can refer to this content. If you base your content only on what a subject matter expert considers to be important, you're running a huge risk of just writing from that one perspective. And that leaves out a lot of people. Your SME's view of performing a task might be radically different from that of users who perform the task under varying circumstances, which explains why some documentation is data-rich and wisdom-poor. Down at the bottom of the pyramid, we have all this data, and it floats up the pyramid, data, information. It becomes knowledge once you learn it. It becomes wisdom once you apply it. And with communication and collaboration, that wisdom becomes part of the data pool, which then flows back up the pyramid. All of this information is valid, and being able to incorporate many different kinds into your documentation is key. Think about if you're planning a trip to Seattle. You're probably going to buy a guidebook or look on some websites so you know what you're supposed to see and what you're supposed to eat. I often Google top 5 things to do in London just so I don't miss anything I'm supposed to be doing. But usually 4 out of 5 of those things aren't really that interesting to me. Now, if you're going to Seattle and you have your guidebook, but you also have a friend who actually lived in Seattle for several years, you're going to want to talk to her to get her recommendations. Now, she might know that you're a vegetarian who happens to be deathly afraid of heights. Your guidebook does not know that. So your friend is going to suggest something other than the fish market and the Space Needle for you to do on your trip. Your guidebook and your friend are both very valid sources of information, and consulting both of them has broadened the kind of information you're armed with for your trip. Now, some user-added content might not have a place in your help, but when it's posted to a community centered around your documentation, it becomes very useful supplemental information. That social interaction, by the way, is documentation. Ann Gentle, who wrote a really great book on the subject called Conversation and Community, said, regardless of their background, education, or training, more people are becoming providers of technical information on the web. And according to the Social Media Explorer, the majority of conversations for most industries are happening on forums, social channels, and blogs. It's a problem. It creates a dissipation of that kind of information, of that kind of knowledge and wisdom. You have limited control over the messages because of that dissipation over all of those different platforms. But if you implement a platform around your documentation, if you host it, if you own it, you are going to be having like a mashup of your user forums and your outside social activity. As opposed to dissipation, it becomes concentration. All that data, the knowledge, the wisdom, it's all going to be in one place. And the cool part is it allows you to provide almost individualized sets of instructions. If people can go into your documentation and read all the key points and then go into the user-added content and find out the stuff that applies to their situation, they have a richer experience. You're also able to have structured and searchable content when you host your own community. When you host it, user-added content, it is structured, it is tagged, it is rated, it is searchable, just like your documentation in most cases. The ability to correct misinformation, also huge. If somebody posts something on Facebook about your product that you're documenting and you know that the steps are wrong and there's something seriously off about it, you might not be able to see it in time to correct it before hundreds or thousands of other people see it and get that misinformation. If you have your own community, you're going to be able to get to it, monitor it, correct it right away. Now, hosting your own community is also going to provide valuable feedback not only to you, but also to your users. Your user ratings, if they have a star system or something like that, are going to tell you, okay, is this topic helpful? Did people like it? But it'll also help readers separate the useful from the worthless. What works for them, what doesn't, they're going to not have to sift through all of this content to find what they need. You're also going to have control over the conversation. Ellis Pratt, who spoke at MadWorld 2013 this past April, plug, by the way, MadWorld 2014 is this upcoming April. Find out more and get your early bird discount at madcapsoftware.com. He said, if you're not providing the environment for discussion, someone else probably is, and you have no control over it. Control is what you want. Leverage your users' interest in social media to direct them to your own community. That means you're going to increase the quantity and the quality of feedback on your products and documentation. Adding a social layer to your documentation is also going to stimulate discussion. When people start talking, people start responding, and then other people reply to that, and then more people start talking. And this discussion inspires ideas. Ideas that your users can share with each other, and ideas that you can get from your users, and maybe even incorporate into your documentation. Now, all of this discussion and the social layer around your documentation will also reveal questions. Questions that you can answer right away. Questions that you have no idea about and can ask someone else about and address right there in the user-added content, or even, again, incorporate into your documentation. Things that your company, your users never even thought about might be revealed in these conversations around your documentation. You're also going to be able to convert your users into contributors and experts. Now, if you run a healthy community, people are going to be more likely to contribute. And there's also the concept of community validated experts. When you see someone in a forum or in a social platform that contributes a lot, gets a lot of comments, gets a lot of likes, has a lot of activity surrounding them, the community is validating them as someone who's an expert on this subject. You want to thank them. You want to reach out to them. And most importantly, you want to keep an eye on them because they can help give you more insight into your documentation and maybe more ideas on what to include, what to exclude, and how to navigate writing. Now, these community validated experts will take the problem-solving pressure off of you. It's great because somebody will pose a question and chances are before you get a chance to answer it yourself, the rest of the community has jumped all over it, a problem is solved, and whew, it's one less thing on your to-do list that you have to freak out about. Now, according to Social Media Today, the #1 challenge for addressing customer issues, according to 48% of respondents in the Social Customer Engagement Index, is resource allocation. Writers and people within companies that do the problem solving for customers don't have enough time or enough people to cover all the bases. But the good news is collaboration solves problems. Social content helps your readers get better answers more quickly. 41% of respondents in the same survey said that collaboration resolves the insufficient resource problem when it comes to finding the right answer to questions. And this happens because in a social platform, collaboration among communities of employees, SMEs, customers, anyone with knowledge and experience that can offer insights, answers, and resolution to requests happens. Any complaints or needs are covered. Collaboration helps you get around this insufficient resource problem and also increase your user satisfaction. You're going to link your audience of users with yourself, with your experts. You're going to be linking user feedback and conversation to documentation, revision, and control. You don't have to write it all yourself. You can let your users do some of the work, kind of, sort of. The way that works is, think about your deadlines. They're super strict, and you don't have the ability to maybe address all the use cases. So instead of providing documentation that elaborates on everything users might need to know about a product, technical writers can open up new avenues of communication with users. When you implement your own social platform around your documentation, any user can now contribute information. So as a technical writer, not only are you the creator of information and the gatekeeper of information, you also become a curator. You have the opportunity to evaluate this user-added content and fine-tune it as well. You're a moderator. You control the quality of this user-added content, and your documentation can evolve as users contribute useful information, and they're taking on an active role in crafting the kind of content they need. Now, when you document the most likely use cases and you publish the minimum needed to release the product, users can fill in the gaps. You can incorporate that content into the document when you actually have the time to do so. In short, you are creating general content, your users are expanding upon it. Now, when you implement your own social platform around your documentation, the cool part is you and different administrators, maybe people in tech support, you can receive email notifications when specific events occur, like user comments are added or certain topics are rated. And then you or other users can respond to user comments and questions in published output or the user-added content around the published output right away. And you don't have to revise or republish because the answers are there in the user-added content. So the opportunity to help co-author content, it helps readers identify themselves to you and to their peers as experts. It enhances the sharing of first-hand knowledge, which enhances your ability to grab some of that knowledge and use it in your documentation. Now, the Harvard Business Review Analytics Services conducted a survey of 2,100 organizations and asked them, what are the business benefits of social media? Because if you're thinking, hey, this looks pretty good, social media around my documentation, I'm convinced, now I got to talk to my boss. You should know this. You're part of the organization. These are huge benefits to businesses when it comes to social. Number one, increased awareness of the organization. Obviously, people are talking about you. Other people are seeing it. People are becoming more aware. 2, increase traffic to your website. When there's conversations about you, people will want to know more, and they'll head to your website to find that out. Also, greater favorable perceptions of the brand. The more your brand is talked about in a positive light in social, the more people are going to think of your brand positively. You're also going to be able to monitor conversations about your organization. You want to know what people are saying about you, don't you? You can't ignore it. What if they're saying something horrible? You want to step in and you want to kind of regroup and redirect that particular conversation. Number 5, you are going to be better able to develop targeted marketing activities. You're going to have a better idea of who your audience is, a better understanding of customers' perceptions of your brand. Do they think you're kind of old and stodgy? Do they think you're new and innovative? Knowing what people are saying about you helps you better craft your reputation. Improved insights about your target markets. Again, you're going to be seeing exactly who's saying what about your company. There's going to be no guesswork. Identification of positive and negative comments. This is huge. You want to thank people for the positive comments, and you want to address the negative comments at all times. An increase in new business. Obviously, people are curious about you and they're coming to your website and they have a favorable impression of your brand. Well, chances are they're going to spend more money with you. And this is big, especially with social wraparound documentation. Identification of new product or service opportunities. The feedback you gather from your customers and potential customers is invaluable, not only to marketing, to documentation, but to product design. You will know exactly what the customer wants, and you will be more prepared to discuss how to give it to them. Also, the ability to measure the frequency of the discussion about the brand. Maybe people aren't talking about you enough. Maybe you need to get out there more. This is how you figure out what your social activity strategy should be. And also, this is also very huge for a documentation team, early warning of potential product or service issues. When people are upset, when people have a problem, they take it to social. And what you want to do is keep an eye on these conversations. It's called social listening. You want to know what people are saying so that you can kind of head off these problems and understand that maybe there's a way that you can help. Explain something better. Add some supplemental information. There are other business benefits to social media as well. You can increase the quality of your documentation, that reader commentary, instrumental in identifying the concerns of your users. You can modify your content based on that feedback to suit the needs of your audience, and enabling your users to provide feedback. This is really beneficial when it comes to assessing the effectiveness of your content. You're getting more focused feedback when you host your own social platform. There's also speeding up the production of documentation. Again, it's that using the user-added content to fill in the gaps. And then increasing customer satisfaction. Readers get what they want out of your documentation. That means they're happy. That means they spend more money. That means your boss is a happy puppy. Also, lowering support costs. Talk about making your boss happy. If you create more effective technical documentation, you reduce the cost of help desk support. It's through the self-discovery of knowledge within your user community. When customers help customers, you save money because they're not calling you. But you have to be aware, even though social tools are less expensive than phone lines and in some cases free, you can't cheap out on offering that support. You have to be just as on point with social as you are on the phone, because people expect quicker service online than they do on the phone. You can't just put intern Steven on the social scene and have him address stuff when he gets to it during his 3-hour-a-day, 4-day-a-week internship schedule. You need to have people on top of this. Let tech support monitor social. Assign different people within your organization, different sites or different parts of your own hosted social platform to address. We actually do that here within MadCap because we've implemented our own platform, MadCap Pulse, to our knowledge base. And different people within our organization are in charge of monitoring different sections of the documentation. If you ever have a question about MadCap Pulse or social, well, I'm going to be your girl. And you'll see in our knowledge base that I've answered a few questions in there when people have concerns. It's a great way, again, to take the pressure off of you. Adding a social platform to your documentation is also going to improve the author-user connection. Comments, ratings, email notifications, they all equal quick response time. And again, online, people want it fast. Social helps your end users become a member of your documentation team, especially if you get back to them quickly. Elicit feedback on your documentation. And when you get the feedback, respond to it, and they're more likely to give you more feedback. Now, you don't have to go in and implement a platform and expect to have this huge, lively, amazing, helpful community right away. You got to start small. Yes for comments, yes for ratings. Did this help you? Yes or no? How many stars would you give this topic? This is valuable to you. They can rate topics, like content, vote on answers to questions to indicate the ones they find more useful. You're going to gain insight into how your users use your documentation. What are they searching for? Results displayed. What are they not finding? I'll show you an example of some of the reports you can find in our tool, MadCap Pulse, in just a moment. So, gauging customer satisfaction with documentation, there is a distinct lack of feedback channels most of the time. And in addition to the interaction between your customers giving you a lot of valuable information, user activity reports, very good when it comes to assessing customer satisfaction. These are just some of the reports you can get within MadCap Pulse and some other tools as well. Which browsers are being used to view your output? What are people searching for? Most importantly, what are people searching for and not finding? Another cool tool within Pulse is you can go in and see what, if you have a, let's say there's somebody in the UK typing in prawn and they're not finding what they need because you use the word shrimp in your documentation. You can go right into Pulse without having to revise your actual documentation and create search synonyms within Pulse so people automatically begin to find what they're looking for. The number of users who have posted to your system, the most active users, the most liked people, most commented people. You can even pull up individual users and check out all of their user activity. And that is just scratching the surface. There are so many more different kinds of information that you can pull from MadCap Pulse results. So, let's check out MadCap Pulse in action, shall we? This is just going to be a real brief tour of what a social platform around your documentation will look like. And it looks a little something like this. This is published HTML5 output that was created in MadCap Flare. And down below it is all of the user-added content. Now, your contents, they're going to look just the same, but wrapped around each topic, a different stream of user-added content. And this content is everything from statuses. Oh, I posted hi, and then I tagged it with my favorite colors, and I tagged it with hi. So if I click on favorite colors, all of a sudden I have everything tagged with favorite colors. This is a great way for you and your users to sort information that's useful to them. You can also add video within MadCap Pulse. Let's say, well, this is a video of my dogs. That's Louie and Olive. But let's say you have a pretty difficult procedure and you have all the steps outlined up here in your documentation, but you think it might be helpful to add a video. Now you can do that within your documentation, or you can have users add their videos demonstrating different use cases below your documentation. Now within MadCap Pulse you can also ask questions. A question appears kind of like a status, but it is populated immediately with an answer box. And when an answer is added, it is given a voting mechanism. So your users can vote on whether or not they find these answers helpful. And these answers are going to rise to the top of the feed below the question so that your users are going to find them more easily. Now I also want to show you what happens when you search, because sometimes a concern is, okay, so I have all of this well-researched, amazing information in my documentation. I worked very hard on it. This is the official information. This is the company line. This is what we want people to find. What if they're finding Johnny users, weird little posts that, that that doesn't give as much information as what I, the technical communicator, wrote. Well, when you go into Pulse and you search, you'll see that your community results are broken out. This is just like a little snapshot of what's in there. You can choose the number of results you're given, and then you're always given the option to click community results and go see all of them. But every single one of the official results is listed below. They are broken out. They are never mixed together. So people are going to be able to see the data, and then up here they're going to be able to see the wisdom or the funny dog videos, either way. Now, your community tab within Pulse, you're going to have the opportunity to do all kinds of great stuff. You can mark things with bookmarks. You can read them later and have access to those. It's a great way for your users to play around and not have to sort through a bunch of information when they want to go back and find something else. Another good way to do that is to sort things into favorites. In my favorite colors list, I have indicated all of these topics as favorite colors, and all the activity pertaining to those topics lives right there. I can also, when I go to edit my profile, I can ask MadCap Pulse to send me notifications on all kinds of great things. Now, you're going to be able to do this as the administrator of this community, as a technical communicator, as someone in tech support, and as a user. I can have email when someone answers a question. Pulse will let me know when someone comments on a post, when someone likes a post, when someone follows me, which means they're going to get notification of everything I do within the system. Now, anytime people mention me or post on my feed, whenever people mention me in a post, when people ask me questions or answer questions, when people invite me to participate in a conversation, I can even get a daily digest of activity that arrives at the end of the business day, and this is going to be super helpful. As a technical communicator, you might not have time to monitor all of this stuff minute by minute, but at the end of the day, you can see what's going on in your system, and you can address it as soon as you can. I also want to show you what happens when you go backstage in Pulse into the settings. Now, there is a snapshot here called the timeline, and this is a way to look at all of the activity that's happening within your system in just one brief glance. So these are the hottest posts. This is my demo community, so it might not be the hottest, most active community ever, because I think me and 4 other people use it. But in the past month, this is what my activity has looked like. And this is just at a glance. If we want to go deeper into this, we can go into reports. And I do want to show you what these reports look like. I told you about some of them in the webinar, but I want to show you what they look like within Pulse. Search phrases with no results. These are things that have been searched. Oh, it looks like people are searching for silver. That's great. And they're not finding it. That's too bad. What am I going to have to do here? Well, maybe I'll add silver to my documentation, or maybe I'll create a synonym for it. You're going to be able to make this look like anything you want. For me, I am totally a donut girl. Yay! You can do number of searches. You can actually do the top 50, and you can even enable a date filter as well. And that's available for most of the reports that you can access within MadCap Pulse. So that, in a nutshell, is what happens when you add documentation or add a social platform to your documentation. If you ever want to check out Pulse a little bit more in depth, I'd be happy to show you. I give demos every day, and I absolutely love it. It's a very fun, very versatile tool. And let me go back to my slideshow because I have a few more very important slides to show you. Like this one. What we've learned today, how social collaboration enhances customer satisfaction, how user-added content supplements your documentation, how user-added content saves you time and money, hello help desk calls, how to incorporate user-added content into your workflow, and how tracking user activity helps you create more useful documentation. And before we get into questions, I want to leave you with this. This is one of my boss's favorite quotes because he, like me, is a big social media nerd. By 2014, refusing to communicate with customers via social channels will be as harmful as ignoring emails or phone calls is today. I just checked the date. It's 2013, so we're creeping up on the deadline here. The point is, in order to stay relevant and participate in the conversation that's happening around your documentation, around your company, about your products, You do need to participate in the conversation. You do need to pay attention to social, and bringing a platform around your documentation is an excellent way to start. So that's me. Hi, I'm Jennifer White, Product Evangelist for MadCap Software. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm smart and I'm funny, or at least I like to think so most of the time. And of course, I give you all the best MadCap news and webinars and all kinds of great stuff about the technical communications industry. If you want a demo or you have any questions, you can contact me or you can contact sales as well. And don't forget that any MadCap Software product, you can head over to madcapsoftware.com and you can download a free trial. So it's really fun to play with Pulse, and I think that you'll have a great time with it. So let me now go into questions. Let's see here. Questions. All right. Let me expand this here. All right. How is the social information impacted when you publish updated content? That's a great question. In the case of MadCap Pulse, it's not impacted at all because MadCap Pulse, the user-added content below your topic, it is served up from a different server. So when you update your information within MadCap Flare, for instance, you are going to be updating your content, and then your social stream exists separately. So it's not going to impact it at all. They exist on separate planes. Unless you change your file name, then it won't be associated with that user-added content that was there before. But that's also an easy fix. All you have to do is remap the file to that user-added content. It's quite simple. Okay. Let's see. What if your social health is not publicly hosted? Have you seen any studies on whether non-public social sites, login required, have the same benefits? Yeah, studies, not so much, because technical social documentation is pretty new, to be quite honest, and MadCap Pulse is definitely a new product, but it is public. There is a login required. However, within MadCap Pulse, you're going to be able to see the user-added content without necessarily having to log in. So that content's going to be available to everyone. And in order to participate, you have to log in. Now, if you're talking about non-public as far as internal, we do have a lot of clients that are using Pulse as a social platform with their documentation for their employees, for their subject matter experts, and for their clients. And it's a really great tool because you're getting that same source of user-added content, but it's from your private community. And the great part is you're going to get all kinds of feedback from maybe people out in the field who are using your products. You know, your customers, it might not be outward-facing to anyone who visits your website, but your internal community is going to benefit from those same different functions. So is MadCap using Pulse in your Flare online help? Yes. Head over to, actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to show you right now. We're going to go to knowledge base, kb.madcapsoftware.com. This is the MadCap Software knowledge base, and it is completely Pulse enabled. All right. So if we head on over to Pulse, MadCap Pulse Server General. Actually, let's go to installation. Bam, system requirements. We've got a question here, and then we've got tech support who jumped on to answer the question. All kinds of great information here, and you have your community tab. This is me and all of my community information so that I'm able to follow a lot of these topics and jump onto these questions as soon as humanly possible. So yes, we are, as they say, eating our own dog food, and may I say that MadCap Pulse is delicious, and we're really loving the impact that it's having on our knowledge base, and it's a really fun experiment. All right, are there any other questions? Well, if that's it. Oh, no, I think we're good to go. Well, thank you for joining me. I totally appreciate it. If you think of anything else, feel free to shoot me an email or, you know, jump on MadCap Pulse on the knowledge base, and I'll be happy to help you out there. So